When we're talking about the terrorist attacks for 9/11, how many, name the terrorist attacks that have happened here on American soil that you're aware of, the big ones. Can anybody do it? 1993, 9/11, Pearl Harbor,
First World Trade Center.
First World Trade Center, that's 93. Anybody else? You are going to be amazed, and America, you are going to be amazed at the terrorist attack that you've never heard of. You know, being responsible means you're responsible for learning all of the stuff that you should know. History is being taught incorrectly, I believe. We're taught to memorize dates. What difference does it make if people are saying, oh, you know what, let's remember 9/11. What happened on 9/11? That's what matters. Memorizing dates is not a way to learn history, but that's the way they teach it to our kids. A date is not the most important thing. It's who, what, where, why is more important. Who cares if 1812 was, the War of 1812 was fought in 1812? Who were they fighting? What were they fighting over? Who won? That's the important stuff. Tell me the story. That's how it stays with you forever, and you learn so you don't repeat it. Progressives have made it all about dates for a reason. When you focus on the date, you don't focus on who, what, why, or where, and it's easy to erase it and make it irrelevant. And if you have made a vacuum of history, nature abhors a vacuum. And so that way, somebody with an agenda can come in and fill in all of the blanks the way they want. 9/11. Those in power now and in the past have wanted you to believe that radical Islam had nothing to do with the attacks. What's his name, who was the Pentagon, Donald Rumsfeld, just said over the weekend, we made a mistake, we were pussyfooting around, we should have said it was radicalized Islam, but we didn't. They do it for a reason, because that way they can erase things that don't fit in with an agenda. Peter King's controversial conference a couple of months ago, I mentioned it last hour, it was attacked and ridiculed by the media as hate-mongering. Everybody there was racist, and they dismissed the threat of radical Islam as a non-issue. I want to show you the clip of the dad that I mentioned last hour, whose son was radicalized and then went on a shooting spree. He says Islamic extremists played on his son and then programmed him to hate Americans. He killed one U.S. soldier and wounded others at a recruiting center. Watch this.
Americans are sitting around doing nothing about extremists, radical extremists, as Carlos' story and other stories that these hearing aren't true. This is a big elephant in the room, that we are losing American babies. Our children are in danger. This country must stand up and do something about the problem. Tomorrow it could be your son, your daughter. We must stop these extremist invaders from raping the minds of American citizens.
Remember the shooting in Little Rock? That was the father. Now, I think America should have seen that. We should have talked about that. But I'm pretty sure this is probably the first time you're seeing it, because the media largely ignored everything and just made it about racism. This has happened before, and it always leads to something really, really bad, because erasing history does not heal wounds. It doesn't make us stronger. Can anybody tell me why you can't go into the arm of the Statue of Liberty now? Does anybody know? This is going to blow your mind. A terrorist attack. It wasn't always closed down, but it goes back to where, at least with me, it always goes back. My favorite president, Woodrow Wilson. Here he is, Woodrow Wilson. His first term was ending and he was running for re-election, and his campaign slogan was, I'll keep you out of the war. Americans were mostly in favor of just being neutral at the time because the World War I was coming. And Wilson pledged to keep America out of all foreign entanglements. He had no intention. He was funding and had every intention of getting into World War I, but he did what most progressives do. He lied like an expert. America was not in the war. However, we were selling munitions to the Allied forces, and Germany didn't like it. They wanted to stop the munitions flow. But they wanted to stop it without provoking America into a war. So they hatched a plan. They would just throw a wrench into all of the gears. Sabotage. Beginning in 1914, over 50 acts of sabotage were carried out on American targets by German undercover agents. The Germans were desperately trying to stop munitions, the flow from America to the Allied forces. So they started throwing monkey wrenches into everything. They would target a ship loaded with supplies headed for the Allies, and they'd place something called a pencil bomb on board. It would explode as soon as the ship left port. That way the saboteurs and everybody else could get away. This is a picture of a pencil bomb here. This is actually from the 1940s, this picture. But back to Woodrow Wilson. In a few months, just with things like a pencil bomb, they caused $1.5 billion in today's dollars of damage. But one attack stood out from all of the rest, and it happened in an area called Black Tom. It's situated here. This is New Jersey here. Here's Ellis Island, right here. Right here. This is now known as Liberty Park. This is the area of Black Tom. It's where much of the armaments came through that were being shipped out overseas. Over 2,000 tons of munitions were stored there, and security wasn't exactly like it was today. Nobody had to take off their shoes or their pants, or be searched. German spies made this a primary target. Well, the Germans came in and they blackmailed 2 of the night guards, and German agents snuck in the middle of the night into the yard, and they went in looking for the cargo in this operation. Ammunition storage facility and several fuel tanks. Well, the agents started fires and then left. They not only left in the middle of the night, but so did the bribed guards. The first explosion rocked New York City at 2:08 a.m. Because it happened in the middle of the night, it saved many lives. And it started aboard a ship called Johnson 17. It was a ship loaded with fuel and explosives. Thousands of tons of war materials burst into the night sky. It was the largest blast of many to come, one right after another, all the way almost until daybreak. At the initial blast at 2 o'clock in the morning, people were thrown out of their beds, 2:08, thrown out of their beds. It broke almost every window from Battery Park, which is where the Statue of Liberty is, almost up to 47th Street. Every single window was broken. The blast was felt as far away as Baltimore. It was estimated to register on the Richter scale at about 5.5. Like I said, only 7 people were killed. Shrapnel ripped through everything because these things were going off. Where is it? This is what was exploding. And so when they exploded, they went out like a rocket. This is where the Statue of Liberty was pierced. Did anybody know that the Statue of Liberty was pierced by ammunition? It was. German saboteurs before World War I pierced the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, her dress, her gown, and much more. It was because of that blast that happened that the torch has been closed off to visitors. A lot of people will tell you, oh, I've been in the torch. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. They're thinking that they may have been in the torch because they remember the spiral staircase. They went into the crown. But only the Park Service now is allowed to go up into the torch. Remember, the media after 9/11 was telling us, well, an exception of Pearl Harbor, this was the first terrorist attack on the continental U.S. It wasn't. They were first ignoring 1993 and the World Trade Center attack. But that wasn't even the first. It's called Black Tom, the first official attack on U.S. soil. I hesitate to say that it was the first attack on soil because it probably wasn't. If we go back and really look through history, there were probably another one. But the progressives washed it away. Why? Can anyone tell me why they might do it besides the idea of Woodrow Wilson wanting to be reelected? This was the first terrorist attack of this size and significance in New York City. And the only way most people find out about it is if you go down to Liberty Park and you go off the beaten path, you will see this. This is the only mark that we can find. This little plaque in the middle. You barely even see it. Explosion at Liberty. This is an important piece of history. You need to know history. We can't erase what happened to us on 9/11 because somebody always comes back and uses it to their advantage. It'll be like 100 years from now. People were wandering through lower Manhattan and they'll see this pond and they'll have no idea what happened here. And somebody will tell the story and they'll say, gee, don't you think we should have known this? Why was this erased from history? Woodrow Wilson, again. He was in the middle of re-election. One of his main campaign promises, keep America out of the war. So he thought that would sabotage his campaign. So he denied it. People knew, listen to this part, people knew that sabotage was happening in America. They knew Germans were behind it. It was common sense. According to the CIA, a wave of wartime vigilantism swept the country, with thousands of Americans denouncing their immigrant neighbors and anyone else suspected of disloyalty. But the government, at the time, continued to deny that espionage was taking place because the time wasn't ready for them to throw Germans under the bus. Today in America, we all know what is happening. But the government, from the economy to radical Islam to global unrest, the government is telling us no. They keep telling you, spend more money. They delete radical Islam from all of our record books. They mock anyone who says, prepare for tough times and possible unrest. But you know and I know that's a load of BS, just like the Americans knew back in 1917 with Black Tom. If you don't know history, it will repeat itself. And it will be drug out of the closet and used by those with nefarious reasons. This piece of history was lost. But then it was drug out of the closet by yet another progressive. And he used it to do one of the worst things this country has ever done. Can anyone think? What was it used for? The case of Black Tom was pulled out of the closet by FDR when he said this: we don't want any more Black Toms. What did he do? He rounded up all of the Japanese and put them in internment camps. Just because they were Japanese, hey, you can't trust the Japanese, look what they did, the Germans did to us. You can't bury the past, because it'll always come back to bite you in the end. One final loose end here. This was at a time where there was no FBI. At the time of the Black Tom attack, Wilson had been briefed many times on espionage activity of the Germans. He knew. In the previous months, he was briefed and briefed and briefed. But according to a Woodrow Wilson biographer who was interviewed on PBS, Wilson knew almost immediately when these things started going off exactly who was responsible. But it wasn't in his progressive agenda. He knew that it wasn't an industrial accident. He knew that it was likely the work of German spies. But just 3 months away from re-election and running on an anti-war platform, he had to suppress this information. He had to suppress the truth. He needed to be re-elected. That's why he never gave an official response to Black Tom, something that registered 5.5. He never gave an official response. Instead, can you guess who he blamed it on? Out of control capitalists who didn't do the right thing. And now you know the rest of the story.